Hello, everyone. Welcome to Six Semper Tyrannis News. I'm your host, Mark Matheny. I want to talk about some of the latest things happening around the world. At my channel, I talk about global events, but what they're culminating in. In other words, global events culminating in what I believe will become a tyrannical world system of government at some point. And I want to talk about the general state of the world currently because, what's really going on around us. Does any body in the general population, for the most part, see that there are extraordinary events shaping all over the globe and that it's going to affect every human being? What do I mean? I mean, if you go and ask the average person about global events, let's say, of the present state, or if you ask them about the economy, let's say, what are they going to do? Most of the time, they just look puzzled, or they tell you they don't really care, doesn't really matter, and so on. And this is because, in my opinion, there's been a concerted effort by elites who are in positions of power to program the masses into accepting an agenda that otherwise would be rejected by most intelligent people, most informed minds, if they understood what that agenda really was about. And so a lot of times, obviously, that agenda is not presented factually, even if they're talking about it. So even if they'll come out with, let's say, an agenda that sounds great. We look at, I've been talking about Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. And so what do? They wrap it in the guise of preserving the planet, saving humanity and the ecosystem and so on through, a series of maneuvers that they have, like carbon taxing and using the carbon footprint, which again, really, I'll talk about, but they go through all these things, right? And they make it sound so great. A lot of times that's what they are going to do, because there's a deliberate dumbing down of the masses through education and the controlled media by, consolidating their power. We know that, like, Rupert Murdoch, for example, owns, most of the news industry, and they basically, whether it's CNN or Fox News or any other, you're basically getting a set of news narratives that they want you to have, basically. So there's this deliberate dumbing down of the masses through this controlled media, and they carry out a program of really mass deception. But it's because they want mass depopulation in the world and total control through these various measures of the latest technology, including surveillance technology, social engineering, and things of this nature. Because if they were to just tell you outright that, hey, we want a world government dictatorial system where we got to wipe out about 7 billion of you people so that we can have the earth to ourselves, and we're going to put the remaining masses in controlled city grids, and you'll eat mostly insects and bugs, and you won't have a whole lot of meat, and you'll have to share your houses with other people and things of this nature. Most people are going to say no to that. Anyone in their right minds. But as the dinosaur media starts to crumble and become obsolete now through the internet and through alternative news media, you got these new forms of deception that are being put in place again to pull the masses back into that programming of the elites through alternative media. And originally you had this organic alternative media that, was coming out and exposing this stuff. So this alternative media that they're using, though, it is not just any alternative media, but it's more of a pseudo-alternative media that's controlled behind the scenes to make the masses believe the media personalities are rebels or patriots, who are fighting against the mainstream narrative, fighting against the man, fighting against the New World Order, and so on. But they also utilize it to control those people, to corral them, to surveil them, also to get them to calm down and things. So, you've got the the mainstream media, and then you have the alternative media. And especially during the pandemic, you started to see during the pandemic, I could say, when a popular alternative news personality known as Alex Jones was beginning to be censored. We remember that on all the major public platforms, social media outlets, and so on. But in my opinion, this was not only targeted to get the masses to find out about Alex Jones, make him bigger, but also to pave the way for a transfer of known media personalities to a false alternative media, so the continuation of this programming could reach more than just the conspiracy-minded people. So, in other words, the elites knew that the mainstream media no longer had that control that it once had. And so instead of the internet, the internet had opened up, a whole array of ways for people to be informed, right? And now, with all the instant live programming and things of this nature, media is just now you've got alternative media, and then the dinosaur-controlled media that they tried to keep in the container, but they can't. And so many organizations that were opposed to the elite's agenda for world domination, its one world government system, started exposing this plan. And so the elites, being smart, however, and always plotting to create their world government system, decided, hey, if you can't beat them, you got to join them. And so, in my opinion, that's what happened. They took Alex Jones and started, prosecuting, persecuting him and things, suing him on all levels, threw him off all the mainstream media. And then when that happened, who started following afterwards? You had Glenn Beck, Tucker Carlson, and others coming off the mainstream media into so-called alternative media, Tucker Carlson and them. So they want you to think now these guys are renegades and they're against the man, they're against the establishment. But really, they were just put there to control the narrative still. And this is what happens. And so we're seeing that happen. And this is why I've done my shows for years, so that I could try to break down these things. And so I just want to really, with that, go through some of the things that are happening around the world. We know that there's still a war going on between Ukraine and Russia, but we all know that Ukraine is the proxy for the United States and NATO, these European powers. So right now, there are a lot of things happening, but one thing I want to show you, I'm just going to show you some news articles that are taking place right now. Hegseth, Pete Hegseth, orders hundreds of senior military officers to Virginia for a highly unusual meeting. This is very, very strange here because, in my opinion, why would you want to get all your top officials in one place anyway, especially right now in volatile times? But it says hundreds of U.S. generals and admirals around the globe have been called to Virginia for a meeting with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on next Tuesday. Several U.S. officials told CNN the reason for the meeting is unclear. The meeting is expected to be held at the military installation in Quantico, Virginia, multiple officials said, adding that no one seems to know what the meeting's about, including the general and the flag officers themselves, or why it was suddenly added to the calendar. And there's a lot of speculation in this article. It says some people believe that there might be a lot of firing of personnel. There's other reasons too. My thing is, I think it's odd because, even if they were going to be firing officials, you wouldn't need to call them there. I mean, they're being called from war zones, combat zones, and so on all over the place. The chief Pentagon spokesman for, his name is Sean Parnell, confirmed that Hegseth will be addressing the senior leaders next week. The Pentagon did not answer specific questions about the purpose of the meeting or if the directive was for all general flag officers in the military and so on. But, Trump then had a meeting. He said at least would be at least partially tied to a review of military equipment. This is what Trump was saying. He said, quote, "We have the greatest equipment in the world. A lot of generals want to be here. They're also going to be touring equipment sites, and we're going to be talking about the newest weapons." But again, that just kind of sounds crazy to me. There was another article similar. This was in the Huffington Post, I believe. This one, generally the same thing. Pete Hegseth orders all top military leaders worldwide to attend a mystery meeting. And it says more than 800 military generals and admirals have to report to a Marine Corps base in Virginia next week, per an unsettling Washington Post report. So, very strange. But, again, it's just saying that Pete Hegseth is going to be addressing these military personnel. The bizarre directive was delivered earlier this week to virtually all of the U.S. military top commanders around the world, the Post reported, which translates to about 800 generals and admirals, and it comes months after Hegseth directed a 20% cut to top military personnel leadership posts to free the military from unnecessary bureaucratic layers. This is what the article is saying. So this is happening. But other speculation could be like, what are they meeting for so quickly? Because there has been an escalation. There's been the drone incident in Poland, and there's been some fly-throughs to different countries. Now Romania and others, more tensions between Russia and NATO. You had, of Russian leaders now saying that we're basically that NATO is at war with Russia. They've now openly come out and said this. And then I was watching, I believe it was Canadian Prepper, and he had a recent, report coming out where Zelensky made a statement against Russia, saying basically that if Russia doesn't want to make a peace agreement, then their top officials need to know where the bomb shelters are. And then Dmitry Medvedev came back with saying, basically, we have bombs that can go through bomb shelters, missiles that can go through bomb shelters, and that America needs to be aware of this as well. So all of this is, escalating. Now, the other thing that's happening, there was an article in Reuters saying Germany plans for 1,000 wounded troops per day in case of a conflict with Russia, because, all these countries in the NATO alliance that are near Russia and so on are prepping for a possible war. And here's some of the things about it. It says medical planning made in case the war between Russia and NATO. Latest airspace incursions by Russian drones have raised fears. Conflict in Ukraine has changed nature of warfare. And so it says that Germany's armed forces are planning how to treat a potential 1,000 wounded troops per day in a large-scale conflict between NATO and Russia if it breaks out, amid long-standing warnings by the alliance that Moscow could be capable of launching an attack from 2029. Moscow has rejected any of these suggestions. It might be preparing for a war with Western military alliance, but the latest incursions of Russian jets and drones into NATO territory have raised fears of the escalation. So, and it just goes and talks about how, that how warfare has changed a lot. Now they're using a lot of these drones and other technological advances. And it says the nature of warfare has changed dramatically in Ukraine, Hoffman said, citing a shift from gunshot injuries to blast wounds and burns caused by drones and loitering munitions. Ukrainian soldiers described drone-infested corridor covering about 10 kilometers either side of the front line as the kill zone because remotely piloted unmanned aerial vehicles deployed by both sides can swiftly spot and neutralize targets. And so I'm glad I'm not in the army anymore, in the military anymore, having to fight these kind of crazy wars because you have no survival rate hardly at all anymore. Even in, more conventional wars of the past, you didn't have a whole lot of time on average to survive a war, but now it's getting even worse. But so you have, the NATO forces and them gearing up in anticipation of a fight with Russia. And then also, here's another article. I'm just going to show you some of these articles. China, a leaked document shows Russia to help China with a planned Taiwan invasion. And, I did a show a while back that shows that, China had been talking about invading Taiwan by 2027, if that happens. And but here it says Russia will train and equip Chinese paratroopers to invade Taiwan, according to leaked documents. The 800-page cache of documents said that China will buy dozens of military vehicles and parachute systems for its paratroopers, and Russia will provide the training to troops on how to operate them. Now, these documents are saying they were verified by the Royal United Service Institute, a British think tank. They appear to show a strengthening alliance between the two countries. They said the deal would give China expanded air maneuver capability and offensive options against Taiwan and the Philippines and other island states in the region. Chinese President Xi Jinping has directed the People's Liberation Army to be ready to militarily seize Taiwan by 2027. This is what I was talking about. This is what I did a show on. A large-scale amphibious operation is highly risky, with the sites suitable for landing craft to deliver troops and equipment ashore constrained by the gradient and load-bearing capacity of the beaches. Seizing airfields could allow troops to flow by air, but as Russia discovered during the invasion of Ukraine, runways can be quickly denied. The PLA is therefore eager to identify ways of diversifying both methods and locations which it can move units into Taiwan. So basically it looks like this is one of the reasons for the delay, is they're trying to figure out how they're going to do it successfully. But we see that happening and more rhetoric between NATO and Russia. So these things are happening. But now, let me show you something else. We know also that lately we've been hearing about Venezuela and how this new war on, drugs and drug cartels that Trump and them are pushing has now caused the United States to blow up a couple of boats now, speedboats, shipping boats, whatever you want to call them, claiming that they were drug cartel members in it with drugs. But now there's ships going to Venezuela in preparation for a possible, invasion of Venezuela by the United States. It remains to be seen, but there was an interesting article in Newsweek. I'll show you that one. A full list of Navy ships Trump has sent to the Caribbean. Let me read this. He says, so regime change is not only illegal, but it is immoral, he says.
Ilegal, es inmoral. Y aquí,
and so he says, and here they will not succeed in colonizing or enslaving Venezuela.
No lograrán ni colonizar, ni esclavizar, ni a Venezuela, ni a
South America or our America.
América del Sur, ni a nuestra América. Y si algún día
and if one day they touch Venezuela,
tocan a Venezuela, toda la América se levantará
all
por
of South
nosotros,
America
por
will
el
rise
pueblo de
up
Bolívar.
for us, for the people of Bolivia, I believe he said. So, so they're prepping for war. Tensions in the southern Caribbean are rising as the United States strengthens its military presence near Venezuelan waters, escalating pressure on President Nicolas Maduro. And incidentally, I know a lot of Venezuelans, and they hate this guy, and they want him out of office. So they look at this as a good thing. They want America to overthrow Maduro. But at the same time, people, is it for the oil? Or are they posturing for a bigger scenario, a bigger war, against China and Russia? And so U.S. naval and air assets have been deployed to combat drug trafficking and safeguard regional maritime routes, with some already in operations this week targeting illicit shipments, signaling the potential for further confrontation with Caracas. And let me show you in this article, it says here are some of the, at least 8 warships have been sent, 1 submarine, the USS Gravely, USS Jason Dunham, USS Sampson, the Iwo Jima, the San Antonio, Fort Lauderdale, Lake Erie, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the Newport News. These ships, and here is where they are being sent in that area. And I'll see if I can blow this up some so you can see it a little better. Near the Dominican Republic. And here is some of the different ships. Here's a Reaper, a couple Reapers, and then other ships here. The U.S. Minneapolis, Minnesota, St. Paul, San Antonio, and all the others. And so it's just basically showing these. So they're surrounding this area, which is, interesting to say the least. But it basically says, by positioning advanced warships and long-range aircraft near Venezuelan waters, Washington is seeking to demonstrate both tactical capability and political resolve. In response, Venezuela is mobilizing troops and military assets, raising the prospect of a direct standoff in the southern Caribbean. So that's happening as well. And there's another article that's just saying the same thing, that Russia is agreeing to help with the Chinese to prepare for a possible invasion of Taiwan. So that's another interesting fact that's happening as well. Also, but the other thing that I want to show you is, with the economy, if you're working in warehouse areas, things of this nature, the industry, I want to show you a couple of startling facts about the shipping industry. We're about to come into the holidays. A lot of warehouses and things are gearing up, but it seems to be all over the place that they're all slow, struggling. They're hiring, but it doesn't seem like the flow of goods are flowing the way they should be. And here is an interesting article that I can show you. Earnings growth outlook is bleak as ocean shipping profits plunge 56% in Q2, the second quarter. Analysts, tariffs, trade reset could hit truck drivers and longshore jobs. So here's what it basically states. I want to show you. I'm going to blow it up a little bit so you can see this one too. But it says the container shipping industry faced a challenging second quarter in 2025, recording its third consecutive quarterly decline in earnings. The industry's net income fell to $4.4 billion, a 56% drop from the first quarter's $9.9 billion, and a 63% decrease from the $12 billion earned in the second quarter of 2024. The decline is attributed to largely to the ongoing impacts of tariffs and shifting trade policies, particularly involving the United States, said analyst John McCown in a report. Now, it goes on, it says, the imposition of tariffs by the Trump administration has significantly disrupted trade flows, leading to a pronounced downtrend in inbound U.S. container volumes. The disruption is forecasted to continue, with the National Retail Federation estimating a 5.6% decrease in U.S.-bound volume for the entire year of 2025 compared to 2024. And as a result, the second quarter in motion has a ripple effect across the global container shipping network, particularly affecting trade lanes that connect the Asia-Pacific region with North America. And so that is happening too. Crazy. The report said that the margins in the container shipping sector have notably contracted. The industry's net income margin dropped 6.1% in the second quarter, down from 12.5% in the first quarter of 2025, and a stark decrease from pandemic-era peak margins. The margin shrinkage underscores the challenging operating environment marked by increased trade barriers and shifting global economic policies. And then there is another article, too, I believe I had on that. Yeah. Just, to show you it's not just one article. Here's another one. Same thing. Container shipping profits plummet to $4.4 billion in second quarter as U.S. tariffs threaten further declines. They're basically covering the same topic. But, so my thing is, guys, I kind of look at it as, the Great Reset that Klaus Schwab talked about. Now we got someone new in there, another new leader of the World Economic Forum, but the same policies. And so they are looking to do an economic reset. This is why I believe you're seeing all these problems. I mean, otherwise you're putting these tariffs in effect to create these problems, so it creates a problem, reaction, solution. The other thing that we know that they're trying to do is set up a digital currency, a CBDC currency, of course, of some sort, without saying it's a CBDC currency, so they're going through the stable coin in order to do so, but it will have the same controlling effect, monitoring and surveillance effect, basically, on the American people and other people around the world. And of course, the AI development is talking about lots of job loss in the human perspective and more AI takeover of jobs and things of this nature. And then Elon Musk and them say, and as a result, we have to have universal basic income and so on and so forth. In the meantime, Trump is meeting with all these Silicon Valley people like Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and Sam Altman and all of these people who he is basically working with on several levels in order to implement, in my opinion, the complete surveillance state. And then Trump executive order quietly declared that NASA is now a spy agency, okay? Which I think is rather strange, all of a sudden this happening. But it says the Trump administration issued an executive order late last month quietly declaring that NASA will operate as a national intelligence and security agency going forward. The order stipulates that the agency will now have a primary function of intelligence, counterintelligence, investigative, or national security work. A major department for the agency, which has historically focused on space exploration as well as space and earth sciences over its 67-year lifespan. No mention of that science and exploration stuff. NASA Watch founder Keith Cowing, a former scientist at the agency who now closely follows its internal and external politics, wrote in a blog post. There are signs that Trump's intentions behind the order were at least partially related to labor concerns rather than spycraft. The order also added NASA to the Federal Service Labor Management Relations statute, excluding it from collective bargaining representatives. So this is happening, which is kind of strange. But I thought about it, and the only thing I could think of, one thing would be, as they're moving forward to implement a total surveillance system in the United States, it might make sense for them to do this as part of the space program and other things too. Maybe they're going to mesh it in with that or something. But the other thing is this three-eye atlas phenomenon that's happening with this massive object hurling through space, moving toward or at least close to Earth. It could be that they want to classify certain aspects of that, and so in order to do so, maybe they decided to make NASA part of an intelligence agency so that they could classify aspects of that, whereas maybe otherwise they couldn't. But now they could do it under national security reasons or what have you. But, it's hard to say. So right now, guys, just think about those things. A massive tensions around the world because China's having problems with their banks. Europe is economically in decline. The United States is. There's a lot of bad money rolling around everywhere around the earth, around the globe. And when this starts to happen, it seems like, the next thing is to go to war. And also, going to war, they can then, call the masses through massive amounts of millions of deaths, and then also bring in their new system like they did in World War I with the League of Nations, and then World War II with the United Nations. This may be another part of their agenda, and so there's this massive fight for global domination between China, between the East and the West, as I've always said, and I think that's what it is for the most part. I will keep doing shows on this, but remember that their goal is world domination. The whole World Economic Forum agenda of mass depopulation and controlled city grids, where you will have nothing, you will own nothing, and they say you'll be happy, and you'll be eating bugs and about 4 pounds of meat a year. And things of that nature, in controlled city grids with mass surveillance systems watching everything you do, everything you say, recording everything that you buy, everything, through a digital currency system that is programmable and traceable and trackable. And also they're able to basically control you with it, because they can shut it down if they need to, that no man may be able to buy or sell save he who receives the mark, if you get my drift. So with that, I'm going to sign off for Mark for Sic Semper Tyrannis News. I'm Mark Matheny, saying protect your own rights, because if you don't, no one else will. And as always, thank you for watching.